The digital transition. The Digital Transition, brought to you by Fulton Trotter Digital, a podcast series created to assist those tasked with implementing digital strategies, where we will share our knowledge and experiences to support you in your transition. Welcome to the Digital Transition podcast number 5. I'm your host, Nathan Hildebrandt, and today I'm chatting with Mace's from the UK BIM advisor, Dr. Marzia Bolpagni. Today we'll be discussing the hot topic of level of development, or, as it's well known in industry, LOD. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Marzia.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here today.
Thanks a lot. Now, firstly, Marzia, for those that are not aware of who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a building engineer and I work as BIM advisor at Mace London, where I develop and implement a digital construction solution for international clients. And I'm also involved in several initiatives. So I'm task group leader at the European Committee for Standardization, CEN/TC 442, on building information modeling, on the topic of LOD that I'm sure that we will cover later. And then I'm also a core member of the BIM Excellence Initiative, and I'm assistant editor of the BIM Dictionary. That is a tool that is available online for free. And I'm also ambassador of the UK BIM Alliance and the founder of Italian in Digital Transformation UK.
So that's a small CV that you have there, Marzia, and that's why I think myself and the listeners today are very grateful for your time and your wisdom that you're going to part with us today. But one of the things that I think that's really important to note is that you're essentially a doctor in BIM, which I think you should be really proud of. And I guess for the listeners out there, what was your PhD focusing on, and what did you find?
Yes, thank you. So I recently finalized a PhD from Politecnico di Milano in Italy on the use of BIM in public sector, and especially on the digitalization of tendering and awarding processes. And as part of my work, I really wanted to develop something useful for the industry. And this is the reason why I work with public clients, in particular with Massport, that is the Massachusetts Port Authority in Boston, and with the BIM team at the UK Ministry of Justice, where these both organizations, they implement building information modeling. And my main findings were really to understand which is the state of art on the implementation of BIM in client organization, and which type of clients they can benefit more on the using of building information modeling. And I also developed a framework for information modeling requirements that has been used as a base for the work that I'm chairing at European level. You know, we speak a lot about LOD, and I found a lot of confusion. So as part of my PhD, I really wanted to create a new framework in order to support clients in defining their information modeling requirements. And also, I developed a smart contract in collaboration with the University of Brescia to study how clients' requirements can be defined and managed in a consistent and ambiguous way to allow automatic and semi-automatic compliance checking. So I cover part of the legal implication of using BIM.
So it's a small doctorate, it doesn't cover much. It covers quite a lot, doesn't it? But in other words, probably one of the world's leading experts in dealing with requirements and stuff like that.
Yes, thank you. I think it is really an interesting topic, because there are a lot of people that they use concepts such as LOD, and they are not really happy with it, but they don't challenge this concept. So I published this article in 2016 called "The Many Phases of LOD" that you can find online. And it was, I think, the first time where I mentioned this confusion that is in the industry. So that was the starting point to then develop something to move forward and to support the industry.
Yes, and hence our conversation today. But you've touched on the fact that you work for Mace. For people that aren't aware of obviously what Mace does, can you share with us a little bit about the services that Mace provide and the type of company that they are?
Yeah, sure. So Mace is an international consultancy and construction company focused and built on exceptional people and commitment to service excellence. And we provide expertise across the whole project life cycle. And I think it is also one of the reasons why I wanted to work for Mace, because we know that building information modeling is about the entire life cycle of a project. So we provide everything from investing in projects, from program management, cost consultancy, construction delivery, fit out, and facility management. And we have work across a board of client base in sectors such as the public building and state, defense and security, hotels and residential, art and culture, health and education, transport, energy, utilities, commercial, regeneration, leisure and sport, and also we are quite strong on data centers. And we are active not only in Europe, but also in North America, Middle East, Africa, Asia, and of course also in Australia.
That's good to be part of a multinational sometimes. But you have been honoured with an award as well from the Italian Engineer Association. You able to share some details about that award and what you won it for?
Yeah, so in 2017, the Italian Engineering Association gave me the award as Women in Genius. So this is an award for my activities at international level, especially in building information modeling. And for me, it's been a great honor to receive this prize. This prize is reserved in particular for women that are working in the construction sector. So, being a young woman is really great to receive this prize.
So you must be really proud that you won that award. Now, you're currently chairing the task group for LOD for the European Committee for Standardisation. Now, I guess this is kind of a really pointed question at the start of our discussion regarding LOD, but do you believe that there's substantial benefits to be achieved from standardisation of LOD?
Yeah, so I've been working at SEN, so that is the European Committee for Standardization, for 2 years now, and that I've also been chairing this task group from experts from 11 countries, and it has been a great experience. So for me, it's not only on standardization, but it's also improving the current way of defining LOD. And there is for sure benefits in doing that, because currently different countries they refer to LOD at different levels. For example, for some countries it's only related to models, other only to model elements. For others, then is a mix of the two. And so for some organizations, this is only related to geometrical aspects, other instead only for the alphanumerical ones, or a mix of the two. So it's really open sometimes to interpretation. Most of the time, this concept is associated to a number, and this can create, as I say, misinterpretation, and also is quite difficult to check in an automatic way. So there are really, I think, benefits on the standardization work on this topic.
One of the interesting comments I guess I'd make would be is here in Australia that there's obviously competing interests across different states that typically occur within our country. How challenging is it actually to have 11 different countries at the table trying to actually create a standardization for 11 countries? Are most of the countries open to change or open to agreement, or is it a harmonious discussion, or is it quite interestingly a debate?
Yeah, I think it is interesting, because Even if LOD has been created as a concept many years ago, still we are discussing about what does it mean and how to define. It's similar to somehow to the definition of BIM itself. In this case, I think that the concept is evolving, but also maybe has not been defined in the best way. So it's the reason why we are here
and having a conversation about it. The main reason why I wanted to talk to you today is because here in Australia, we see a lot of requests from clients for delivery of kind of, at the end of design, either an LOD 300 model, or when clients are specifying deliverables to contractors, they might say, well, I want an LOD 400 or LOD 500 model at the end of each of those phases. From our perspective, I understand the reason that there are significant problems with this blanket request, because, essentially all they're doing is they've seen some BIM material out there and thought, oh, well, this is what I need. And the challenge is, as you kind of talked about earlier, it's all about understanding what benefits it's going to provide. Now, questionably, in the UK, with the BIM mandate that came out in 2016, have you seen more detailed deliverables specified now because of that? And are clients actually more savvy now in understanding LOD at an element level, rather than, and essentially asking what elements they'd like modeled, rather than just having a blanket statement across a contract as a one sentence?
Yeah, before answering to your question, I would like to say something that maybe I didn't mention before. So about my work at European level is also interesting, because we were speaking about the need related to LOD, what is needed. So the work that I'm carrying at SPAN is called level of information need. So it's not anymore LOD. And the standard also will be published this year. So hopefully you will read and find it interesting and useful. So this term, level of information need, has been included for the first time at international level in the ISO 906050 series. So that are also based mainly in the UK work and the PAS 1192 series. So coming back to your question related to the current state of work in UK related to these topics, it's quite interesting, because UK has been the first country defining the so-called level of definition as a combination of level of information and level of detail. There is this separation between the geometrical part, so the level of detail, and the level of information, the alphanumerical one. And this is quite. I think that this was a first improvement, because it forced the clients in UK to think about not only the geometrical aspect and the detailing part, but which are the information, the properties, the attributes that are needed. So it's really about the information part on building information modeling. And I remember sitting with clients and defining this topic and with them. And as most of the people, we associate this LOD to a number. So in UK, it's from 1 to 7. But then when you define this number with the clients, and especially if building information modeling is part of the contract, then you want to say something more, and you want to check if the source is clear enough. Because now we start to have also legal claims related to building information modeling. So what does it mean LOD 3, or what does it mean LOD 300 of a wall or of a building? Are we sure that we are speaking about the same thing? Are we sure that we define in a clear and unambiguous way our requirements? So I think that with this separation of information and detail here in UK, it was good to start to think about, okay, what I would like to receive, which are the key information that I would like my model to contain, and so on.
One of the things I think about a lot is about streamlining and standardization of things. Now, if we take the scenario where we talk about beginning with the end in mind, or essentially understanding the purpose of use of the information that the client is or expecting, is there a position where industry could set some default settings for the level of development, and in the UK being level of detail, and then level of information? So, say, for example, I know here in Australia, NATSPEC set up a number of years ago a massive matrix which had set out the information requirements specifically for the different deliverables. So, for example, if it was for quantity takeoff or if it was for structural analysis, they had a series of parameters that were required to be delivered for each of those, but it didn't outline it for each individual element type. Now, if say, for example, industry came up with a standard EIR, for example, where the settings were put in place already in response to each of the BIM deliverables as a starting point for clients to actually work from, rather than kind of saying, oh, you have to sit down and talk with a consultant, because 90% of clients are probably not educated enough to understand what their needs are. And then it's going to become a scenario where a lot of consultants are essentially going to have to be engaged constantly on every project to assist clients to actually specify their deliverables rather than having a default position. And then if they're a more advanced client, then they can modify those requirements on a needs basis. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is really good point. Starting with the end in mind and a focus on the purpose, I really think is a key part of this LOD concept, the information requirements in general. And for me, it was really clear when I was working in Boston for the Massachusetts Port Authority, working with Luciana Burdi, and she and her team is integrating building information modeling with the Lean construction. So with the Lean principle that's providing only the information that is needed and not to produce waste. So after working there, I really realized the importance of defining the purpose. So we produce a lot of information, and also we complain why, for example, maybe in the construction phase, the models that are being created by architects are not used. But why? Because they are not fit for purpose. Because in different phases and for different purposes, we need different information and also some different, also the geometry is different. If you think in doing energy analysis or structural analysis, actually the information and also the details are not the same, even if in the same phase. So it's this part of the work that we are developing at European level is really focused on the purpose. So you should define why you need the information. So this is also a good exercise for the client. So asking, instead of asking for too much information, what you would like to achieve, how you would like to use your model, how you would like to use the information for. Because if it's only for visualization, why to create data-rich models? So, and is also associated to different costs, for example. And another thing that we were discussing before is the information need and how to standardize this. So how to help the industry to having some standards. So as you can imagine, as we know, creating these standards is quite difficult. Also because sometimes in different countries we have different specification, different regulation that we need to follow. So there is, I noticed that working at European level, and but there is an effort that should be done by the industry trying to find a common base on at least the minimum requirements for different purposes at different stage of the project, for example. And one good example that we are doing in my group is working with the acoustic institution. So they are helping us to define, okay, which are the basic requirements that are needed in order to perform acoustic analysis. So we need to work with this organization and this institution together in order to find a common agreement.
One of the things, I guess, other things I want to touch on, I guess, is the level of misunderstanding with LOD and its purpose. Now, once again, I kind of touched on it before where I talked about blanket clauses about delivering an LOD model to LOD 300, 400, 500. Are you able to outline for me kind of the purpose of LOD? And I know it's just something that's important here. And what also needs to be specified by our clients to ensure that they get the information they need. So at this point in time, many people just think of LOD as being, it's either geometry in their mind, or they assume wrongly that LOD 300 means that, the specific information that they require is going to be attached to it. Now, you talked quite clearly just before about all the problems that we always face here in industry right now, where contractors may receive models from the design team and contractors complain saying that the model's not fit for purpose. Now, maybe that's purely because of misspecification at the start from the client to the design team about the expectations of what they need to deliver. So I guess I'm going around in a bit of a circle, but I guess the key thing is what's really important about LOD specification for clients? What's the key thing from your perspective and how they should approach it?
So for me, it's really important to start thinking why we need information. So first start with the why, and then to define the what. So what we needed to provide. And actually, the work that I'm chairing at European level is trying to help creating this framework in order to define, helping the clients how then to define the what. But first is really to understand, okay, what I would like to do, what I would like to achieve in doing information. With my information, will be the information modeling and how I would like to use my model for. And I think that we need to be flexible. I think that now there is also the technology can help us in order to define information requirements in a more flexible way. I mean that by now this LOD is only related, as I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, it's only related to model elements, and in other instead is only related to models, so to the entire building. So, but why is not, for example, related to system, to parts, to components? I really think that we need to have a more flexible approach, because for different purposes at different phases, we define our requirements not only at element level. Especially if you think about it, the early stage, it's quite difficult to define all the elements that will be in your project. So first start with the end in mind. So start to define the purposes, how you would like to use the information for work with your clients, and try to define this, and then use the level of information needs a framework in order to specify which are the information that are useful for you, which are the geometrical aspects, and also the documentation that should be produced in order to achieve your purpose.
So it's actually just sitting down and actually taking the time to work through your specifications, similar to how you'd go through the specification for your actual built asset in terms of what you actually want built. You actually invest in time in determining what information you really need. So you're not actually getting weight. It's like when you do a brief for a building, you don't just go, I'd like a couple of extra rooms here, but I don't know what they're needed for. I'll just have them anyway. Asking for additional elements to be modeled to a certain level or certain information that you'll never actually use is a similar waste.
Yeah, exactly. And I always tell my clients, stop using this numbering, these metrics without defining what do you really want, and try to define in detail what does it mean for you. Because when you started to going in the details, you realize that these numbers sometimes are not very clear. So you need to go in more detail, also to facilitate, as I mentioned also before, an automatic or semi-automatic checking that is really important for building information modeling. So to be able to check the information in automatic way.
With the BIM mandate and the BS 1192 standard suite that you have over there now, have you found that clients have been communicating the information needs and to all the purposes a lot better compared to the past? Because obviously right here in Australia right now, the clarity around the actual why isn't that much in terms of information provided by clients. Has it changed in the UK?
The change is really slow everywhere. Is a journey for everyone. But I noticed an improvement also from the client in better defining the information. I think you need to have this conversation with the intelligent. I call it the intelligent client. I mean, clients that understand the importance of building information modeling, the importance of having structured information, so that for them is not only a tick box exercise. So we are doing BIM because maybe the government is asking for, or because maybe a sort of fashion everybody is doing. But we needed to have these clients that they understand the power and the importance of why we are doing building information modeling. And when you are with these clients, then also when you cover the LOD topic, you say that they say, okay, I don't want to use this number anymore. I want to have this, that, and so on. So they are also able, together with the consultant, to define their requirements in a more specific way. So it takes time, but I personally I was lucky to work with some advanced client and to see these improvements.
So the positive will be that now that the ISO 19650 is in place and we have state government agencies down here in Australia actually nominating them as part of their policies, that we may start to see clients being more informed and actually asking specifically or sharing with the delivery team or their supply chain the purposes of why they want BIM, and that might actually then provide a response from the industry in terms of how they should actually deliver those models to meet the client's needs. So the digital deliverable is coming without waste. Now, I want to touch on the second most controversial topic regarding LOD, and I call it controversial only because of current client requests around Australia, and it's possibly a worldwide thing as well. And the client's request from contractors to actually issue an LOD 500 model. Now, I guess one of the things we haven't done as part of this conversation is kind of explain the terminology behind what I've talked about. But LOD 300 is essentially a reasonably accurate model depicting accurate dimensional qualities of an element, and an LOD 500 model is a model that's a verified as-built exact dimensionally accurate element. So that's kind of, I guess, the difference. Essentially, the second that a building is built, it becomes an existing asset. Now, there's two challenges that clients face. A client that wants to work on an existing built asset, and then a client that essentially, the LOD 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 series essentially becomes almost irrelevant once a building has been completed, and then it becomes no longer a design or construction model, but a built model or an existing. It becomes an existing asset. Now, are there any reliable? And I'll call it reliable because it's a challenge, and there might be some systems out there, but they're not perfect yet. But is there a reliable LOD system in place somewhere from around the globe from your research that classifies reliability and accuracy of as-built elements?
Yeah, so this is a very good question, and also one of the gaps that I found in my research at the beginning was when I was carrying out my PhD. Is that, for example, one of the most common specification that is used from beam forum, but maybe only a few people know that it is only for new construction. And instead, we have a lot of already existing building that we need to manage, and especially in Italy, we have a lot of heritage buildings. So Italy has been the first country to develop a metric taking care also the existing buildings. So in the UNI 11337 part 4, so the LOD has been defined with letters to do something different from A to G, but why using letters? So the aim was to underline that the classification was different from the others. And in particularly, the LOD F and G are specific for existing buildings. So this was a strong message to say when you refer to existing building, you need to pay more attention and to specify your information requirements in a different way. So if you need, for example, to do different kind of service or investigation on the current state of your building, how you specify this, what you would like to achieve. Another answer to your question will be how to, for example, to capture the reliability and accuracy of building information. So this is more related to scanning. So, for example, how you scan an existing space or an existing building or asset in general.
Yep.
So in US, they develop a different classification with a different numbering system from 10 to 50 in order to define the accuracy of point clouds. So this is another reference that is available in the industry, and it can be used as a reference for this kind of activities.
So what we'll do is we'll provide a link at the bottom of the show notes for this podcast to that. Do you believe that's probably the good place to start for clients with existing assets in terms of using that Italian standard? There's nothing much else out there currently.
I think it is really a topic that should be investigated in more detail. I think that these standards are a good starting point, but we need more work and also to use it and to test it, and also to improve if possible. Again, these are mainly based on number system or letter, but which for me is really what is the meaning behind. For example, it can be LOD half, LOD G, or this level of accuracy 30, for example. We need to specify in more detail what does it mean in order to be sure that we are speaking on the same things in order to avoid misinterpretation.
Yeah, and I'm guessing at the same time the costs of delivering certain levels of accuracy, and I know when you deal with point clouds and surveyors right now here in Australia, the cost of getting certain accuracy, depending upon the level of accuracy you actually need to manage your asset. And that's another key point in terms of waste from industry, in terms of delivering essentially too much accuracy, because the cost of delivering accuracy costs you more. And the purposes of actually just knowing that an asset's in a specific location to a certain dimensional outcome. And I guess, is that something you're also experiencing overseas? I guess it's very difficult, say, for example, with heritage buildings in Italy, because, accuracy is probably very important for those things in terms of if they are looking to potentially replace some sandstone or marble in the future, where they'd probably want it to be, millimeter accurate, even though it's not a kind of a manageable asset. The purpose of actually having an accurate model of all of those facades would be very important. Is there any thoughts on that from your perspective as well?
Yeah, I think that you're totally right. I mean, there are some types of assets that you need to have a very high level of accuracy, because maybe you are doing some restoration work, or you want to record some details in order then in the future to replace. And so you spend a lot of effort, a lot of money for doing this kind of task. But then in other cases, it's more like to have an information about the dimension. So you don't need to go in very detail about the accuracy of this, but because you are doing, for example, space planning, so you need to understand, okay, how big is a space. So then I think that we are coming back to the same point as before. You need to have clear which is the purpose, because then based on the purpose, you can also define which is your investment, how much you would like to spend on money, on time, and on resources in order to achieve your goal. But then you need to have very clear first what is your purpose.
That's right. Now I've got one more question for you, and this is a question I'd like to ask all of my guests that I have on the show. And hopefully at the end of the series, I'll have a swathe of answers that are actually I might turn into one separate audio bite. But what does BIM mean to you?
Yeah, so this is a good question, because as for LOD, that there are, a lot of the acronym is translating in different ways. So there are level of development, level of definition, level of detail, and also for BIM is building information model, building information modeling, building information management, and so on. So there are different definitions that has been provided from at international level, and also as I mentioned before, I'm assistant editor of the BIM dictionary, so you can find the definition that is available in the dictionary to BIM. For me, building information modeling is really an enabler for digital transformation. For the digital transformation that we are carrying out in the construction sector. So this is what it is for me.
So Marzia, thanks very much for taking the time to sit down with me today to discuss level of development, or LOD. And if, based on our conversations, if our clients begin to specify it correctly, it's going to assist industry to deliver higher value digital assets for our clients. For those that are very quick in listening to this podcast on the 3rd of April, 2019, you'll also have the opportunity to hear more from Marzia in a presentation at Brisbane at QUT tonight, where she'll be remoting in from London to present to the audience. So make sure you pick up your tickets. Thanks once again, Marzia, for your time. For more information, please head to our website and find the links to learn more about what we discussed today for further reading. I look forward to sharing with you our next interview in a fortnight's time. And until then, good luck with your digital transition. If you would like assistance with your digital transition, please contact us at digital@fultontrotter.com.au. For more information, or if you'd like to continue the discussion in the comments section, head over to our website, thedigitaltransition.com. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on our future podcasts. We would also appreciate it if you provide us with a rating and take the time to provide us with a review. Thanks for listening to The Digital Transition, brought to you by Fulton Trotter Digital. The Digital Transition.